Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's virtual town hall meeting, the Accounts Payable Automation Answer Forum. My name is Mark Brousseau. I'll be your moderator for today's town hall meeting. Today's town hall is brought to you by IOFM, and it's sponsored by Basware, Esker, Bottomline, Abby, and CSI. We have a couple of housekeeping notes to go over before we get started. If you have any technical questions or issues, please use the chat box and a member of the IOFM team will respond to you right away. If you have any issues with audio, please click and make sure your computer speakers are on. If you happen to get disconnected, you can log on again using the instructions provided in your confirmation email. If you continue to experience difficulty, please email iofmvirtual@iofm.com and someone will respond to you right away. We encourage you to ask questions throughout the virtual town hall. This is your opportunity to get free consulting advice. Some of it might even be good. Use this hour to your full advantage. Use the chat tool to send in your questions and get them in early because we will run out of time. And finally, this session will be recorded and you will receive a thank you email with the on-demand materials after the event. So we know that accounts payable automation is a top priority for businesses. 71% of AP departments plan to automate further as a result of the issues brought about by the pandemic. In fact, even organizations that describe themselves as being largely automated plan to deploy more technology. The question becomes, how do we go about doing that? How do we ensure we get the biggest bang for our automation buck? Well, that's a big topic. And to help me answer it, we have assembled an all-star panel to provide you with their insights and advice on how to go about it. So I've asked each of them to give you 30 seconds, adjective-free, to tell you about their organization and how they come at this conversation. And to kick us off, I'm going to hand it off to Liane. Liane?
Hi, everyone. Nice to have you all with us today. I am Liane Sanson with CSI. I'm a divisional president for the firm. I am approaching my 12th year in fintech related to payment automation. So I'm excited to be here today and talk with you all about how we can help your businesses get to where you need to be with automation. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, Liane. Stephanie?
Hi, Stephanie Ryan with Basware. Just celebrated my 2nd anniversary. My background's a little bit unique. I have nearly 20 years of finance and AP industry experience. I am a former client of Basware, and I have been in a lot of the shoes that you're probably filling today, where we have had to search out and audit and see demos and evaluate, and then ultimately pick a provider. So I'm happy to be here representing both sides, both as a solutions consultant for Basware, but also from the AP side as a director of AP Shared Services.
Thanks for joining us, Stephanie. Dan?
Thanks, Mark. I've been here 21 years because nobody else would have me. That's how I like to joke about it. But I think our main mission is helping folks to turn customer service, accounts receivable, and procure to pay staff to be rock stars. So free them up so they can actually enjoy their work and provide value.
Reggie.
I'm Reggie Twigg with Abby. I've been with the group for a little over 2 years, heading up solutions marketing in various areas. At Abby, we focus on actually the document side of accounts payable automation and also the process discovery side. My background is actually fairly diverse, but focused. I've been in the software industry for well over 20 years. I actually started in ERP financials and worked my way through into the document recognition and using artificial intelligence technologies to automate those processes. And I'm here to offer that point of view today.
Well, we're glad to have you, Reggie. And finally, Gunita.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining and spending your valuable time with us. So Gunita Bindra, VP of Product Management with Bottomline Technologies. I oversee product management for Payable, which is the end-to-end AP automation platform Bottom line helps businesses pay and get paid. Very happy to be here. Hopefully we can be of some help today answering some questions.
Yeah, and I'm sure we can. So Dan, we've been at this now for about 8 months, and we know that organizations are getting their suppliers paid, but maybe in not the most ideal way possible. Talk to me about where it is you hear that AP organizations are still struggling in adapting to the new ways of working and new challenges that we're seeing today.
Well, I think a lot of CIOs did a very good job in very quickly enabling their staff to go home. And we actually, some of the kudos we heard was clients came back and said, our departments that were using your technology, and I'm sure this is the same for some of my peers, were able to go home first. Okay, so customer service, accounts payable, they were able to go home first, even if there's a culture within the organization of not working from home. And so I think many organizations did that if they had a tool. I think others may have struggled where they didn't have a technology or they had an older legacy technology. Suddenly organizations are saying, okay, we want to pay invoices quicker, we want to control our spend. Now we're sending everybody home, and now we need to get people to learn a new tool when everybody's 100% remote. So there were some challenges there that I could talk about. So I think that's been one of the areas that perhaps companies were a little bit early on, a little bit wary about. How do we deploy new technology when everybody's suddenly at home, both users and IT? And maybe for some it wasn't such a challenge really, because again, with my peers, I'm sure many of them are used to deploying technology around the world. Many of their customers perhaps really had done this before, but there was a perception that it was going to be a challenge.
Reggie, biggest challenge you hear AP organizations are having today in this new reality?
The biggest challenges we have seen are largely the same challenges as before, but with a virtual spin on them. And specifically, when it comes to processing invoices, bringing them into the organization, reviewing them, making sure that everything is in order, a lot of that process had started going digital before this year started. And the invoices have been coming in via paper still, but also they have been coming in via email channels and other electronic channels. So we have seen not a huge disruption in the flow of invoices into the organization, but we have seen a growing interest in how to automate it better, and specifically where the customer challenges have been in looking at the actual processes rather than just the documents themselves, because the technologies for understanding the documents have not changed significantly in the past 9 months. But their processes, as one of my colleagues pointed out, had been designed for people being in the offices, sure, in their offices. And now those processes had to adapt overnight to people being virtualized. And that has suggested to a lot of our customers that they look deeper at the process itself.
Yeah, Gunita, what is it about the way people are doing things these days that makes you cringe?
Paper, the infamous paper problem still exists, Mark. What makes me cringe is, again, everybody still, mostly AP departments, still relying on just point solutions for invoicing or payments or just, ERP. I'm also seeing that when our AP managers have to log into various systems to process their AP automation, I think that continues to be a challenge.
Yeah, so for all the people listening in, Gunita, who think they have this problem licked because they're using their ERP's workflow, or they've got this portal that for some of their suppliers, you're telling them not to be so smug.
Kind of, sort of, yes.
Oh, come out with it.
Yes, so I think ERPs are great with their, accounting solution. They are built to support your ERP, internally. But I think when it comes to invoice automation or payments, I think that's where the expertise of matching capabilities, artificial intelligence required to match a PO with an invoice number, that in the life cycle of a payment, carry through the product, the PO and the invoice number through the payment, I think is just critical. It's just critical when we're all working from home.
I think
and you can't really go to somebody's office and and say, hey, did you see this PO? Did you see this invoice? And I think with all of that, automation is definitely the answer to some of the challenges.
Yeah, you better call ahead if you go to their office nowadays. Hey, Stephanie, we know that many organizations, when they couldn't get into the office, they said to their suppliers, send it to us as an email. Send us an email invoice. There's a problem there, isn't there, Stephanie? And what is it?
Yeah, and that's great. Unfortunately, you lose that visibility. It's going to many different people across an organization. So there could still be delays in payments. Everybody knows there was a marketing team that used to always hang on to their invoices for too long. And it's the same kind of problem. Instead of the paper sitting on somebody's desk, the invoice is in an email in somebody's inbox. And really, there's no urgency for them to continue to move it faster and quicker. And AP's always left in the dark and always having to escalate a payment, usually with those scenarios.
So Liane, what is it that you're hearing AP departments are doing about all this? What's been the top priority you're hearing when you talk to AP leaders?
Really, it's those functions that are not easily done from home. You know, CSI is very focused on payment automation versus invoice automation, and it's not as big as a lift for a customer. It's not as much to learn from home. You know, really, from our customer base, new business wise, and those customers that added functionality, they just needed to get payments out the door in an automated fashion, and they can do that by sending a file from your ERP system and letting your provider pay your supplier, whether it's virtual card, ACH, or check. It might be the easiest lift in the broad range of AP automation.
Yeah, I reckon, Liane, somebody listening in on this conversation to this point has said, yeah, I know this kind of blows the way we're doing things, but who has the time to do an implementation of technology? You're saying it's not that hard, Liane, at least as it pertains to electronic payments.
Well, I would say, think about all the time that you're putting into it now to do different check runs, handle paper checks. I mean, if you put in maybe a few hours of time just to do what you need to set up the technology, you're saving yourself a ton of time in the long run, plus the cost associated, plus you're potentially going to earn revenue back from your card program. There's all kinds of reasons to automate it.
Reggie, is it just as easy when it comes to the invoice automation piece?
Invoice automation has a few challenges, and it's because there are multiple dimensions to automation. The one dimension of it is actually just reading the invoice itself and being able to reconcile the data, do the data extraction, the verification, the reconciliation with backend processes. That's one aspect of it. But as my other panelists have pointed out, a lot of those processes are defined still today as paper-based processes. And while many organizations have gone to email under the auspices of automating the process, really the email process is just an electronic copy of their paper-based process. And those processes are prone to breaking just as easily as the paper-based processes are. So again, the process itself becomes an issue in automating the invoice understanding, the extraction and validation of the invoice.
Reggie, you clearly have your thumb on the pulse of the industry, because Raymond just wrote in and said, so Mark, what am I supposed to do with this OCR solution we have deployed that was built for paper processing? Dan, you must hear this all the time. What do you do with these systems that were built for opening the mail and scanning paper?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think some of the largest drivers that we've seen this year, one of them has been, we have an older tool. It's not giving us the outcomes we expected. That application doesn't really exist anymore. It's been acquired, and we're not getting the support we want. So for sure, I think what folks like my colleagues here will probably suggest as well is that, you know, make sure you're looking at technology that includes AI, machine learning. And in our world, what that also means is if you come on board our platform, it's quite possible that invoices and sales orders flowing around the platform have already that your competitors and your customers and your suppliers exchange are already being traded, and that reduces the learning and the need to do it back. If you go back 10 years, I said I've been here 21 years. If you go back 10 years, everybody was huffing and puffing about the pains and the hassle and the frustrations of OCR. It was a pain, not just because it was extracting. How do I get this to extract data? How do I take time for a business user to have to learn and map and code this stuff? Okay, I'll give you a story. The accounts payable manager for a company in Chicago said to me, Dan, I'm sitting up in bed at night reading a book about algebra and how to learn regular expressions. It's a nightmare. Thank goodness she was willing to do that. That's 10 years ago. She said, I'm doing that to make your project successful, to make this product work. Nowadays, I don't think anybody's got the time to do that, nor the inclination. They expect technology to be super easy to use. And yes, I agree. Most products, they may use a component of OCR, but you want to dig deeper. You want to make sure it's got AI, machine learning, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, but on the bright side, that lady was reading the algebra books. Now she's all set up to help her kids with homeschooling today. You know, it's great. Gunita, talk to me about how we get started. So there's somebody listening in right now who's a paper pusher. Maybe they moved over to email and they've got people keying from screens in their living room while they're wearing slippers and watching Oprah. And they know they got to fix this. So what's the first step for the person who has no automation? How do they get started, Gunita?
Make a plan. Let's make a plan together. So when you start your journey to AP automation, the first thing is you take a paper. Let's not take a paper. Let's use automation right here. There are softwares available that will help you make a plan. There are providers available that will help you make a plan. You list out the things that are critical to your business that are relying on paper, and then count the hours that you're spending making those processes work. Or even in some cases, those processes are not working. Mark, I'll give you an example. We had an assistant controller of a management consulting organization. During the pandemic, that organization's AP department was declared essential. They had to go to the office because they were reliant on paper and they had to cut the checks, right?
Yeah.
So that was just very, very, I was really hurt when I heard that. So I think from my perspective, make a plan, set a budget, sell it to your management, work with them, tell them that this will transform their department. This will help them scale their organization. As companies grow, the software that you choose to automate with should grow with you. So those are some of my recommendations. So let's make a plan that should include the receipt process, what will it take to process the invoices, and then payments. Let's look at electronic payments and some of the things that Liane mentioned.
Stephanie, you're itching to say something.
Yeah, I'm like, I wanted to make sure that I could add on to that because that was great.
Just wave your hands in the air like this from now on, Stephanie. There you go.
So Gunita, you bring up an excellent point. Have that plan. You kind of spoke to the processes. I wanted to add to that when I was going through this with my team in my previous role, I literally sat and did desk audits with my team so that I could understand the steps. Sometimes you pick up natural efficiencies, I like to call them, but other times they are just, there's just nothing more that they can do. You've already automated it as best as you possibly can. You've already used Access to create a query to give you an upload template. I mean, it is what it is, but to understand, to be able to relay that to a provider and say, this is what I really need to make sure we can target. But I also say, definitely have think of things with a magic wand. Your magic wand is you need to tell the provider what you're looking for. Think big. You may not know, and that's where providers can come in with those best practices. And they can say, I understand what you're trying to accomplish. Here's how we can solve for that.
Does this sound right, Liane?
Yes, I wanted to add the plan. I absolutely agree with. A lot of times there's no budget to invest in the AP technology that the AP department really wants to have. And one way to combat that is on the payment automation side, card is a component, virtual card. Virtual card earns rebates, just like you as a consumer earn a percentage back on the cards that you use. It's the same in the business world. There's a lot more volume, so depending on the size of your business and your cardable spend, meaning the suppliers that will accept card, you can bring in a lot of revenue to your AP department that you can use to invest in the technologies that you want to have a department that is operating seamlessly.
Yeah, Dan, and we have a related question to what Liane just brought up, and that is someone's wondering about the level of IT involvement in the implementation of a solution, whether it's for invoice automation or payment automation. They note that their resources are strapped and there's lots of competing priorities. So how hard is it on the IT department to actually deploy one of these solutions?
Well, I'll give you an analogy. I'll go back to another company in the Midwest. They deployed our technology, and I said, hey, I went back to the global VP of procurement and said, okay, now it's all over. Why did you choose me? Why did you choose us? And what he said surprised me. He said, speed. Speed was, you were faster than anybody else. That was really critical because it also came down to how long was I going to have to beg and steal and hold on to those IT resources. So I think everybody on this call probably faces the same challenge. And that is IT resources are like gold dust. And it's not getting any better. There's also a background of a lot of companies are planning to go to new cloud-based ERPs. And IT resources, if they're not doing it, they're thinking about it or planning it or working with RPA and other applications. So I think speed is important. There is a play we've seen on our end, which is sometimes partners can fill that gap. Can partners, given the right security access, can partners help do the data replication, the security setup, and help you get a system in place so you can protect your A players? Yeah, you're gonna govern the partner. You're gonna have folks look at that. Sometimes partners can be an ingredient to help you because you just need them for a short amount of time to get things set up. Sure, you're still going to govern and manage the project and oversee it, etc. But sometimes they can provide a role to help you with they can provide the gold dust because you're in short demand, short supply of it.
Reggie, Katie wants to know, what is the average implementation time for a solution like yours?
The average implementation actually depends upon a number of factors. IT is one of them, but increasingly IT reliance is giving way to the business side making decisions about how they want to run things. Specifically, there's the phenomenon of the citizen developer. Citizen developers can come out of IT, they can come out of business, and they can impact the speed. So with all those qualifications given, an actual invoice processing solution can be implemented and be up and running in anywhere from a week on up to several months. And it really depends upon the complexity of the project, how far reaching it is, whether or not they actually do process discovery. And here's an important element of it. We've talked around this throughout this discussion. I have talked to so many organizations who said, we bought automation, we bought OCR automation, fine. We bought RPA, fine. We have our systems of record, our ERP, fine. All of those things are great, but we didn't get the return on this that we expected. And the reason that they cite overwhelmingly is that they did not do the proper discovery prior to implementing the solution. And discovery becomes important because that's where you decide and determine where and when you need IT, how big the solution is you want to implement, and how you can phase it so that you can get faster returns. So it's not an easy question to answer. As far as speed is concerned, it all depends on the complexity of the project, how effective your process discovery is, and how willing you are as an organization to bite off the chunks that you can handle and then add onto it over time.
So Liane, I'm going to ask you the same question from the payments perspective. How quickly can you get started with electronic payments?
Very similar to what we just heard. If you are a small business or even a mid-sized business with one accounting system, simple processes, you can be set up in less than a week, a couple hours of work, just getting on the phone with us and walking through. But if you're a large multi-billion-dollar multinational company, it's going to take months for us to figure out your systems, connect with them, do the testing. There's just more layers, the more complex that you get.
Yeah. Dominique is asking a question, Stephanie, that has your name written all over it. Wondering if you've seen an improvement of IT resources now that work from home is at least the short-term norm. Has this made things easier?
I do. I think that people are able to, I think, focus better at home sometimes, but they're not having necessarily the desk drop-bys and the discussions, because an IT group is typically an in-office position. So as long as the meetings are still occurring, which they are done remotely now, you know, through Teams or through Zoom, those can all be done. So yes.
Dan, Kayleen is wondering all about robotic process automation. She wants to know, what are the best practices? What are the ways people are using RPA? Are they using it for payments? Are they using it for reporting? Are they using it for invoice entry? And of course, Dan's gone.
No, I'm back. I'm still here.
There you are. Okay.
Mark, I think
there
RPA.
he is.
I think RPA is an interesting question. Now, just like Juanita talked about, and I think yesterday you got fired up talking about Workday and ERPs. So I think when folks go out and look at, if they're
never get fired up, Dan. Never get fired up.
No, you're always calm and level keeled and no. So okay, so I think you were keen on this point, which is I do think when it comes to RPA and ERPs, the players there are going to suggest they can provide options in this space too, and I think they can. What I think the panelists here bring is best of breed and a lot of experience. So I would say to folks, they should do the due diligence, look for examples and outcomes. I think Reggie said a minute ago, people put in these tools, but did they really get the outcomes? So I think when you do your due diligence, this is my advice to the audience, don't just ask, have you got the feature? Great, let me see what outcomes have you delivered? How have you transformed the company's efficiency and the working lives of the people? Not over the last year, but over the last 5 years, 10 years. I want to see you've really got experience and delivered. So RPA. I've had folks say to me, these portals are the bane of my existence. I'm like, why? What does that mean? And they say, well, it's the new manual. No, but we talked about people, but the new manual is I've got to spend a third of my time going up to a Reeve or some other portal to pull down the invoice, to pull down the sales order, to acknowledge the order, to upload some information about when we're going to pay. So I think RPA has a play. Some of the CIOs that I work with will sit down. The way we like to use RPA is to use it in a tactical way to go and pull those invoices, put it into a system like yours or one of the panelists, and then off it goes. So there is a place for RPA, but I think you have to do your due diligence and you want to make sure that it's been really successful. One other point, and I go back to something that a CIO said last week, and Stephanie, you alluded to it, was the email hotbox. Microsoft hasn't figured this out yet, and I'm hoping they don't figure it out in a hurry, because one of the things that leaders have said to us is, hey, when emails do come into a shared service box, can't you guys provide some technology to help sniff and pull out the relevant invoices versus this is a dispute, this is a question, this is a pizza order, whatever. Can't you bring some technology to do that? Because Microsoft isn't really doing it, and I've got people sitting here trying to clean up the email inbox, and that takes time, that's a waste of resources. That can be a play for RPA. It can also be a play for other technology. So I think RPA can be both good and I'll be honest, I've had some organizations, some panelists, some enterprises come back to us and say, the reason we're talking to you is because we put RPA in and we didn't get the outcomes. And it's been taxing for our developers, our citizen developers, as Reggie was talking about, to maintain this stuff.
Yeah, Reggie.
Yeah, and Ted,
go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. I think RPA, artificial intelligence, machine learning are just technologies. I think the question and the conversation has to change to what is the problem that these technologies are solving for. So I think anytime we say, hey, we're using AI or we're using RPA, let's ask, what is the problem that the technology is solving for? Tell me how it's going to save me time. And the question I saw that was posted was, what are some of the use cases? So Dan, you mentioned on the payment side, there are certain portal payments that you require technologies, or you could leverage technologies like RPA to scan through and just make a payment on behalf of the customer. So that's another use case that we've seen.
Stephanie, are we running the risk of turning technologies like RPA and AI into more point solutions? Are these just going to be more silos potentially in our departments?
I mean, potentially. I don't think that there's anybody on this call that's going to say, the minute I automate, I flip the switch and we're good. It goes back to that plan. It goes back to that process review to make sure that people are doing things and they're attacking the things that their ultimate goal is going to solve for. What is that goal? Just getting rid of paper isn't enough of a why. What is it causing? What are the true goals in that particular company's needs? And being able to leverage technology is a definite piece, but you still need somebody that oversees it. There still needs to be controls, or audit may not sign off on it. So there's definitely a give and take when it comes to technology, how much you use and what it can do, and having those controls in the background that are going to stay static and be part of that auditable environment is really the key, I think.
Reggie, Marie's wondering if we're looking at this all wrong, if we shouldn't eliminate paper and emails altogether and move to electronic invoicing.
Well, that's one aspect of it, but it occurs to me that automation is seductive. That for years,
I've been trying to tell my wife for years that what I do is really sexy. She just won't bite.
I can't comment on that. I can comment on the
brought us there, Reggie.
The invoice process specifically.
But automation is seductive. I can't wait to see how you get there.
Automation is seductive because for years organizations have been saying we need to automate this process, and at first we looked at ERP as a way of establishing a system of record and creating an auditable process for AP, AR, etc. But then we added on to it with various solutions. Fast forward, AI, RPA, OCR, or any other three-letter acronym you want to use is a tool that can automate processes. But the biggest problem that organizations have with their accounts payable is that they say, I want to automate this process rather than I want to rethink this process. Mm-hmm. And automation can work within it, but tools like RPA and OCR can automate elements of the process. But if the process itself is taken as a given, you're just going to get slightly better results for a broken process. Incremental improvements in a broken process. And what we see customers doing now, or what we see AP departments doing now, is starting to ask more fundamental questions about the fact that we've been here before with automation. Why are we not getting the results we want? Maybe we need to step back and take the process itself as a problem.
Yeah. Hey, Gunita, we've been talking about electronic invoicing for years here in the United States, and we've made some progress. But I'm curious, this push toward emailing invoices around, could this set back our efforts to move to electronic invoicing? Could people be lulled into a sense that, well, getting my invoices electronically now, is this potentially, going to set us back in moving to the nirvana that we're hoping to achieve?
With emails, I think, one big thing that comes in is security. Now that we're all working from home with, compromised networks, not saying our home internet is compromised, but I think with emails, the spoofing, the email, it looks like it's coming from your CFO, but it actually isn't. I think all of that will create more problems than not. I think the next evolution is supplier portals. It is the AP automation portals where those invoices can be uploaded or sent to directly.
Yeah, Liane, Janet is wondering about the willingness, hold on, I get back to the question. the willingness of suppliers to accept virtual card payments. Are they more receptive to virtual cards so that they can accelerate their cash flow, or do they still balk at the costs associated with them? What's going on with this dynamic? We know suppliers are under a cash crunch too. Has that changed the calculus for cards?
You know, on the AR side of the business, automation is an issue as well, and receiving paper checks for them is costly. And COVID, same thing. How are they supposed to receive their checks? I was on a panel recently with MasterCard where we talked about a major increase in the acceptance of card because of that. It's faster payment, meaning it settles quicker. You're not waiting for a check in the mail. You don't have to risk getting employees to go into the office to receive them. There is a cost associated with card. That cost is often built into the cost of doing business. There's ways to absorb that fee, and there's also benefits of getting discounted interchange where the fee makes sense. And there is a break-even point between the cost it takes to accept a check payment and the fraud associated, the manual labor, and then the cost of accepting a card payment. And I think the industry has gotten to a point where we're meeting in the middle between the cost and the fees associated.
And that brings us to a related question for you, Liane. David is wondering about the security controls in electronic payment solutions. All our staff work from home. We're becoming increasingly concerned about BEC attacks. What controls are in place to help mitigate the risks of BEC, phishing attacks, and other issues of fraud?
From CSI's perspective, we have a UI that allows us to put in workflow. So fraud from internal circumstances is buttoned up. Fraud from external, there's always fraud associated with checks. If you're going to mail checks, you're going to be susceptible to it. Virtual card mitigates a lot of that because there is single-use cards, meaning the card works once for the exact amount of the invoices you're paying. Once the card's used, it's gone. It can't be compromised. ACH has fraud risk associated with it as well, but between your fintech and your bank, there's a lot of security measures you can put in place to eliminate it.
Stephanie Martin is wondering about what is happening with early payment discounts. Are you seeing more offers from suppliers?
With early payment discounts, similar to almost the comment that Liane made about rebates, I mean, you're going to be able to save money on sending in that invoice earlier, but saving that percentage on that total that's there. So it's there is a study that was held where it determined 20% of your suppliers are willing to go with early payment discounts. They just need to be asked. So I think it's a way to save additional money to put that back in. But there is the flip of that where you do need to be okay with those funds leaving your account on day 10 versus day 30. So it's kind of it's to the company's best interest, and I think working with your CFO and your controllers that could definitely be brought up.
How about it, Dan? Are you hearing about more offers from suppliers for early payment discounts to help accelerate their cash flow?
Well, I look two comments. One is, I look at least one of our companies, and they're getting 30% more early payment discounts. They're in the restaurant space now, so you can look at that industry. They're a restaurant supply company. The space they're dealing with is hungry for liquidity, hungry for cash. And I think what I saw is a lot of the financial directors and financial leaders we work with, I was chatting with them early. March came along, we were deer in the headlights, we were wondering how will we continue. So I spoke to a lot of our customers and said, okay, what's going on with your business? How are you managing? The trend I heard at that point is most financial leaders went out to their banks and extended the revolver. They borrowed whatever they could, they borrowed money. And they said, okay, so cash is king once again. We're not just going to put in payable technology to make sure, thank goodness we've got payables technology to lower our risk and improve our visibility of where our money's going. We're also going to focus now on sending invoices, collecting money, and lowering our average weighted cost of capital. So in short answer, yes. Now, obviously, your treasury team are going to, and your financial leadership are going to sort of help you determine what the rules are, and should you be offering early payment discounts. But in short, have I seen a lot more interest in exploring it? Have I seen both new potential customers and existing customers say, I want that, or I want to take more advantage of it, I want more visibility where it's available? Sure.
Yeah. Hey, Reggie, I reckon there's somebody listening in on this early payment discount question and saying, yeah, right, Mark, if only we could approve our invoices fast enough to collect those blasted discounts. What's going on with turnaround times? Are you hearing folks are struggling to get their invoices approved in a timely manner now that everybody's working from home and it's harder to chase down information and collect details and resolve exceptions?
Yes, that is an ongoing problem. And it goes back to the earlier point we were making, is that this is where automation can be seductive, is that you invest in an automation technology like RPA or OCR and expect it to solve that problem, when the problem is actually a process problem. And how you work with your suppliers, how you define your criteria for success, and how you process the invoices accordingly. So you can process an invoice to clear that step in the process pretty quickly with existing technologies. But what ends up happening is that if it's implemented as a point solution, that part of the process could shine and the rest of the process is broken.
Yeah. Liane, Dominic has a question that is a spin on this topic, and that is maybe a bigger question here. He writes, but how do you balance early payment discounts against rebates from card and ACH payments?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be one or the other. If you're getting a large discount, it's less likely that they will accept card on top of that as well. But keep in mind that the supplier is giving the discount because they're getting paid earlier. It doesn't necessarily change the payment methods in which they accept. If they take card, they take card.
Yeah, Gunita, Jennifer's wondering whether the industry usually negotiates with each supplier, or do payments upload to a marketplace where a supplier can choose if they want to take the payment early at a discounted rate?
So it's actually both. So there is the aspect of supplier onboarding, where providers like ourselves will work with the suppliers and get the payment terms and threshold information for the buyers, and would put it in the platform for you to see. Within the platform, you can see during the OCR process, or I would say the digitization process, if the invoice does have early payment discount capability, it will extract it and show it within the product for you to make decisions. There's technology to help prioritize the invoices that are in queue for the suppliers that are supporting early payment discounts. So it's I think a mix of all of the above.
Stephanie, is there a best practice when it comes to early payment discounts? Should you be negotiating with one vendor? Should you be using a marketplace, or do they both work equally as well?
I think that it's kind of it can run one end to the other, where you are either able to coordinate that discount because of the largest supplier that you particularly have. Maybe it's an IT type supplier, or it's something that you pay often enough over the course of the month that you could benefit from and reap those benefits that way. I think it can go both ways. And of course, having payments set up or the invoices set up so that they can streamline quicker, be noted as having an early payment discount so that the folks that are approving them are able to get them through quicker and be able to try to benefit from those discounts, as well as even leveraging the things that have already been said.
Yeah, Reggie, Victor's wondering about benchmarks for evaluating solutions like yours. We know that a lot of data capture vendors make a lot of hay about their kill rates of data, about their capture rates of data. Well, Victor wants you to clear everything up for him. What's reasonable in terms of OCR accuracy and touchless processing? What should you be asking? What should you be focused on? And what should you be asking vendors about?
That's a really good question.
Good job, Victor.
I run into it all the time. And what tends to happen is that people will start asking the question like, what is your straight through processing rate? Well, it depends. What is your extraction rate? Well, it depends. And it depends on the level of complexity of the form. It depends on how much data you need to extract and validate. It depends on those things. So as far as benchmarks are concerned and best practices, it really goes back to understanding what your requirements are and how many fields you're looking to extract, how complex are the documents, and what are your processing SLAs. And we can achieve those fairly easily if those criteria are defined. As the old saying goes, what gets measured gets managed. Mm-hmm. And your success rate is going to be dependent directly upon how clearly you define the requirements, because the AI technologies for doing document and understanding and extraction and verification are pretty advanced. It's how you use them to achieve the results that's going to get you better or worse results.
Yeah. Dan, help Victor out here. What types of benchmarks should he be asking a vendor like you about, and which ones does Esker stand behind?
Right, I was waving there. I was hoping you'd ask me that question. I think Reggie is spot on, and I think a lot of players come and you know, a lot of IT leaders or finance leaders, when they first engage, they might say, well, what's your touchless rate? What's your straight-through processing rate? I'm going to beat up the RPA players in the market now, and I think they've been guilty a little bit. You were getting excited about Workday yesterday. Mark, it's my time to get excited and say, look, I think there's people out there that are over-promising technology. Okay, oh, well yeah, we 100% straight-through processing. Just go with us. And I think that's a bit irresponsible. I think here's what is a better way of doing it. Another way of doing it is track. Okay, and this is what we've, you know, our customers have said, this is what we want in your UI, your visibility, your dashboards. Track it. Yeah, tell me, okay, have I got the option to let invoices flow straight through touchless? Yeah, of course you do. But can we also track what is the amount of time I touch less, and show me that over time? So on a field level, I want to see where are we making less touches, where are we improving. Let me know which suppliers are a pain and causing us more issues. Because then you can get into, is it the clerk or the person in the department that needs some training or isn't quite as fast, isn't quite as efficient, or are they dealing with a handful of suppliers that are a nightmare? Okay, so I think you have to go down to the field level, and then let's be honest, when you put in technology, the executives want to see a quick win. Or they start saying, oh, well, maybe you made a wrong decision here. You know, so you've got to give them a quick win. And I think that's why it's important to say, give us tracking that shows that this is improving, or bring us. It's a bit like a 3-year-old last night decided to come into the room at 2 a.m. just to show me how the flashlight is working. Oh, great! I'll go back to bed. But the reality is, bring me a flashlight so I can see, or the enterprises on the call, they can see, well, where are the processes for us to clean up, as opposed to these promises, which is, oh, well, it'll all be straight through.
Yeah. Well, Liane,
okay,
go ahead. What? Go ahead, Reggie.
Just one quick point on that, and it is really the point that the straight through processing rate is as good, ironically, as your process discovery tool, not necessarily your OCR tool. The ability to understand the process and then understand where the touches are, where you're spending the time, is going to affect your outcomes more than an OCR tool is going to.
I think that's a great point. Liane, Marshall is wondering about what's a good rule of thumb for the percentage of spend that should be put onto a virtual card. Is there a certain success rate that Marshall should be shooting for here?
It's going to be completely dependent on your industry and your vendor makeup. If you have a lot of vendors with a lower dollar, you're going to get higher acceptance. If you have 100 suppliers with a lot of volume, it's less. It just depends on what is within the margin of the relationship, whether the vendor can accept card. If I had to give numbers, I would say the lowest end would be somewhere as low as 20% of your spend, not necessarily your vendors, but it's the spend that you want to get on the card. 20% of your vendors, and I've seen it as high as 70 in some industries. That would be the extreme high.
Wow, that's excellent. Gunita, Christine writes in, we're a small company and we wonder at what point we should stop the manual process spoiler alert, stop them now. No. What's the point we should stop the manual process and switch to an ERP? Or should we skip the ERP and go directly to an automated accounts payable process? This is like a big fat curveball coming right at you, Gunita. You're going to hit this out of the park. I can tell.
Okay, so here's how I would see it. Don't look at your organization as small today. Look at what your organization will be 5 years from now. And the automation that you put in place today, let's make sure it's going to scale with your organization. I would say, yes, there are point solutions where you could, where there's workflow capability built in, there's audit, ERP, parts and slivers of it built in. So you can definitely use to get your, there's a concept, agile, right? Let's make your accounts payable agile. You start small. Yes, you could use a point solution, but as you look for your organization to be 5 years and beyond, I would definitely see you using an ERP that has embedded payment and invoicing solutions.
Yeah, Stephanie, what advice would you give to Christine?
Yeah, along those same lines, don't just look at today, look at tomorrow. I think that there are many options for automation that can be outside of ERP, no matter the size. So I think it's just finding the right provider that can support your business today and tomorrow to get you to that automated state. And there's I'm not disrespecting the ERPs at all. It's just that they tend to be more focused about more of the general ledger and the accounts and the P&L and, like all of the inner workings of the ERP, rather than that global view of being able to see everything, have that visibility that an automation provider can actually give you.
Dan, Carla's wondering about the impact of ERPs moving to the cloud on AP automation. How will AP automation solutions have to adapt, if at all, as ERPs move to the cloud?
Well, I'll answer this question and the last question, if I may. There's merger and acquisitions is up. Now has been for many companies, if they had cash at hand, there was an opportunity to go and buy companies. And in doing so, what happened is they were buying new ERPs. So many of the organizations that return to us will often have 2, 3, 4, 5 ERPs. Not everybody has that, I realize. But what that means is, I think, when you going back to this question of should I use something that's in the ERP, should I use something that's agnostic? And if we go and buy more companies in the future, that's fine. We can easily absorb the invoice volume, the procurement volume from that platform, even if the company is ultimately going to try and force and merge and get everybody onto one ERP. That takes time. Okay, so I think what it means is having an agnostic tool that has the ability to talk or communicate with any ERP, even using existing mechanisms like web services, APIs, file exchange, or dedicated connector to that platform is important. But I think if you're looking at growth and there's a possibility that you may well absorb new ERPs, there's a risk of building a tool specifically in Oracle or SAP or Barn code. You may well want to think, if we're going to grow, we want something that's a bit more flexible.
Yeah, Liane, Stephanie is wondering about how to go about evaluating electronic payment solutions providers. What really differentiates all of you, and why should I work with a fintech and not a bank? All right, Liane.
Same point Gunita made earlier, come up with a plan, determine what it is that you want. Banks have a lot of strength because they own the treasury relationship, but they're slower on the technology side. You'll find a lot of banks have partnered with fintechs. We have partnered with several banks at CSI. So there comes a point where it might be worth it to look at both if you're a large enough business. But fintechs are agile. They are agnostic. They can work with the way you operate versus making you, a bank you're going to have to fit into their box, versus a fintech can learn about your system and how you're doing things and map to that.
Gunita, same question to you.
Can I'd like to add to that. So when you're evaluating an electronic payments provider, let's look at, they'll do a supplier match. Let's look at what that match looks like. Secondly, don't limit it just to that. Look at how many payments will you actually have to touch. So going back to benchmarking, how many payments can be converted to electronic payments? How many payments can be touchless? What touchless means is once it's approved in your ERP, they're straight through process to the vendor or vendor's choice of accounts receivable solution. So look at the technology as not just how many payments are being converted to electronic, but are they straight through process? The third is security. When you're looking at an electronics payment provider, one thing you definitely want to look at security protection. What is the fraud mitigation tools available? Is there a risk score that is calculated based on a payment that's coming in, or a risk score that is calculated based on an invoice coming in? So look at not just electronic payments, the supplier match, but go beyond that. Look at security, look at fraud mitigation, and then of course rebate is another element as well.
I'm starting to get up against it. So 30 seconds or less. Stephanie, what's the biggest mistake that end users make when building a business case for AP automation? 30 seconds or less.
30 seconds, that they are going to literally replicate everything they're doing today with the new automation tool.
Never happens.
It doesn't. There's my answer.
Dan, 30 seconds or less. Biggest mistake they make when they're building a business case for AP automation?
Well, I think you've got to remember to sell both emotionally and logically up the chain. So that means, what do we want to maintain? What do we want to enable for the future, for how we can make life easy for our suppliers, our customers, and our internal stakeholders, and put a monetary value against all of those things. I know it can be tricky, but you've got to try and remember to put a monetary value. I said emotionally, so let the user see it. Make sure the users are on board saying, I want that tool and I'll actually use it.
I want that to make my life easier. Reggie, what's the biggest mistake folks make when building a business case for a solution like yours?
It's automate first, ask questions later. And it is simply that we have the ability to automate processes, but automation merely optimizes an existing process, no matter how good or bad that process is. And good process discovery with good, clearly defined criteria, good goals, and a desire to change things to make it work better actually gets better results, rather than just automating things with the available technologies.
Gunita, biggest mistake folks make when building a business case for AP automation?
They're solving just for today and yesterday. Let's solve for tomorrow, 5 years from now. Let's make sure it's scalable.
Liane, same question to you. Biggest mistake folks make when building a business case for a solution like yours?
Not using the technology to its full capacity to benefit your business, using pieces of it that you need, but not the full scope.
Stephanie, 30 seconds or less. Single biggest piece of advice you'd give folks when evaluating a vendor?
Okay, so are they going to be able to meet the needs today and tomorrow? Again, acquisitions happen quite often. Are they going to be able to grow with me, with my organization?
Same question to you. Single biggest piece of advice you'd give to folks when evaluating a vendor, 30 seconds or less.
I think you have to ask yourself, okay, what is the criteria? How do we buy? What gets us comfortable here at this organization? Let me see evidence of success in both delivering results and improvement in the working lives of the staff. Because as I said earlier, it's very easy for people to come up with marketing taglines saying, we've got all these features. Look for results, and results have been delivered over time.
Gunita, same question to you. Single biggest piece of advice you give to folks when evaluating a vendor?
When evaluating a vendor, look for someone who will answer your phone call, be with you 2 years from now, not
Reggie,
just during the selling process.
Absolutely. No sell and runs. Reggie.
Well, biggest single question is, how can you help us understand our processes, and how can you go on this journey with us? How adaptable are you, and how good are you at asking questions about where your process is broken, where the biggest opportunities for changing things are, rather than gaining incremental improvements? Are you able to ask those tough questions?
Liane, same question to you. Single biggest piece of advice you give to folks when evaluating potential?
Gunita and I are both giving emotional responses, but how does the relationship feel? Like, let's assume, yes, they can provide you all the technology. Like my best clients, we had a great relationship from the start. Even when there's problems, we can work on them together. Just how does it feel? Does it feel like the right provider?
10 words or less. over the next year, what is going to be the single hottest technology in AP automation? Stephanie.
Single hottest technology. Why am I first? No, I'm kidding. Being able to further grow electronic data connections to get more invoices into a more electronic format.
Not pithy, but accurate. Dan.
Predictive analytics will be big. I think what we're seeing both on the AR side and the payable side is let me know which of the suppliers now represent a risk. Let me know which customers are also representing risk, because we're not going to get out of this thing just yet. And there's a credit crunch.
Gunita,
another credit crunch coming.
Gunita, 10 words or less. Single hottest technology over the next year.
Data, insights, and intelligence.
Reggie.
Intelligent discovery that really focuses on the interactions between the people, the processes, and the content of those processes and where to target your solutions.
Liane.
I don't have a techie answer here, but I would say find out what's out there and use it.
E-payments, right? Hey, that's all the time we have. Liane, Reggie, Gunita, Dan, Stephanie, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. That is all the time we have for this session. I just have a few housekeeping notes to go over. Before we officially close out, we hope to see you on all our town hall meetings, demo sessions, and peer roundtable discussions throughout the week. Thank you again to our panelists for a great discussion, and thank you to all of our attendees, you people, for taking the time out of your busy day to join us and to submit your questions. This session was brought to you by IOFM, and it was sponsored by Basware, Esker, Bottomline, Abby, and CSI. Thank you all. Have a great day. Hope to see you this afternoon at our product demo sessions. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Mark.
Yes.
If you're around in 4 years' time, maybe you should narrate the next presidential election, because nobody gets a chance to speak over you. You do a great job.
Thank you, Dan. I think.
All right, buddy. Thanks a lot.